Good morning. My name is Megan Edwards of Focus Communications, and today we're joined by David Stein, President and CEO of Kuya Silver, which trades on the Canadian Stock Exchange under the symbol KUYA. David, thanks for your time this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Megan.
So for those who are new to the company, could you give us a quick introduction to Kuya Silver?
Sure, we're a Canadian-based company with two projects. Our flagship and more advanced project is the Bethania silver mine in Peru, which we have been developing over the last few years. It's a recent past producer that we're looking at making some improvements to and putting back into production. That project, we've drilled off a first ever resource, and we've expanded the vein mineralization on surface with some more recent exploration, and we also have been we've been successful permitting a brand new mill there as well. So we've done quite a lot of great work on the project over the last few years. And then we have a second project in Northern Ontario, Canada, another silver focused project in the cobalt silver mining camp. And we've made a recent discovery there. So we've got some very, very recent and exciting exploration on that project.
So I wanted to have you back on the show to discuss a slide from your recent webinar where you highlighted the Lassonde Curve. Before we chat about your projects, could you maybe explain the Lassonde Curve and why it's important to investors?
Sure. So here's our forward-looking statements, and you can check out our presentation on the web. So let's just start with, this is a version of the Lassonde Curve. Now, if you Google Lassonde Curve, you'll see a lot of different graphics that are similar to this. I really like this one from Visual Capitalist. But the credit for the idea goes back to Pierre Lassonde, and probably several decades ago. And the idea here is that over the lifespan of a mining company, there's going to be various ups and downs, even if they are in the end very successful. There's going to be some ups and downs depending on what stage the project is at, what the perceived risks are at that particular time. And in our business, we bombard investors with a lot of different, and sometimes very technical information, perhaps to our detriment. So this is a great way to kind of crystallize a lot of that information into one slide that really shows where mining companies typically go. Now, it's very idealized, of course. It doesn't take into account what's going on with metal prices, and it's sort of for a single project company. This is what you would expect their stock price to do over let's say 5 to 10 years as they start exploration, make a discovery, and then eventually put that discovery into production as a new mine. So, but it is something that's that's looked at by a lot of investors, a lot of analysts, a lot of experts in our field, because it is really a good way. Once you understand the background of it and maybe some of its limitations, it's a really good way to look at a project and a company itself and where they fit in the grand scheme of things in terms of when the best upside is. And typically the best upside is going to be at two particular points. It's going to be right as a new discovery is made. So that's the first hump there on the curve. And then the second hump is when they take a project and put it into production. And those are two really good times to own a stock for two different reasons. First of all, when you're just going out and starting exploration, you really have nothing. You could drill, and most companies drill out projects and end up with nothing. So as soon as that discovery is made and investors start to speculate about how big that discovery could be, you're going to have an upswing in the value in the stock price. Up until the point where sort of investors are satisfied, where they sort of figure out what this company has. And that process can take many months. It can take years, depending on the project. But it's typically a good time to own a stock from discovery to the peak, when sort of I would say that first peak could be when the first resource comes out. At that point, you sort of start to know exactly what you've got. and then there's less reason to speculate. The second curve is even more important, and you can see in the curve, in the Lassonde curve, it's an even bigger top, and that's when you go into production. At that point, now you're producing cash flow. So you've now taken care of probably the biggest risk for all junior miners, which is financing risk, dilution risk, because once you're cash flow positive, you can start allocating those cash flows to other things like exploration at the company's discretion. And of course, before you have revenue and cash flow, you can't do that. So that typically is a time when a company gets re-rated, we say, in the business, and the valuation can go up a lot. And certainly, if you look around at other miners, you'll see that repeated examples of that over the years.
So where do Kuya's two projects fit along the curve?
All right, so that's where it really gets exciting for Kuya, because I think, as the title of this slide suggests, I think we have two projects that are perfectly situated on the Lassonde Curve, and they're at two different parts of the Lassonde Curve. I guess let's start with Bethania. So Bethania is a project that we have, largely de-risked. All the stuff that can take time and be very boring. The economic studies, the permitting, that's a big one for a lot of projects. We've taken care of that already. And we're really at the position now where we can start to build that and take it into production. So we're obviously not there yet. We're at the bottom of the curve. Maybe arguably we're at the very bottom there based on where our share price has been trading recently. But nevertheless, as we develop the Bethania project, which we are ready and fully intend to do over the coming months, and we should get into production. And I think once we demonstrate that Bethania is in production profitably, you'd get up towards the top of that next peak. And what that means for Kuya, we don't really know, of course, but it should be much, much higher than where the stock is trading at today. Now that's just for the Bethania project. Of course, the Silver Kings project is different. It's more of an earlier stage exploration project. So there we've now made the initial discovery. So we've taken it from arguably worth zero to worth something, and that something is debatable. And as we continue to drill our discovery out, which in our case is the Campbell Crawford prospect, we should be able to delineate more and more, make it bigger and bigger, and that should cause the market to assign more and more value to that particular project. And then so we'd see the Silver Kings project becoming more and more valuable towards that first hump. So ideally, companies have projects that are in this phase, either in the sort of discovery delineation phase or going into production. We're lucky we have two projects that are situated in this way, where we can start adding a lot of value very quickly here, and I think that's really the opportunity for investors right now. We've been through the doldrums with the sector and with Kuya in particular, and we're now positioned really well to see some significant upside.
And for our listeners, can you discuss the next steps in development of your projects?
Sure. So I'll just very quickly go through. So here, this is one way that we look at the development of both of our projects, Silver Kings and Bethania. Exploration is on the top in red, and development is on the bottom in yellow. And I think what's really special about Kuya is that we can actually create multiple avenues or tracks of value for our investors at the same time. And that's really what we're trying to say with this slide. One thing to consider, for example, is as we build Bethania, we could actually start delineating one of our other prospects in the same camp, like for example Carmelitas, and actually set another star, a third star on that Lassonde curve, where we're right in the right spot to start creating even more value. So that's another way that having multiple projects and even multiple prospects within the same project is a huge advantage for Kuya. On the Silver Kings project, this is our land position. We're focused on the northern part of it at the moment, although we do have some targets throughout the 18,000 hectares, including in the far south there, where we've just recently acquired more properties. The Angus vein discovery within the Campbell Crawford prospect is our most recent success. This is really what this is really the discovery of a new cluster of veins, starting with one vein, of course, which is the Angus vein. But we feel we've identified multiple veins here, all of which have the potential for this super high grade native silver mineralization with cobalt. And so that's what we will continue to drill, through the rest of this year and beyond. It is worth mentioning again, and that at the Silver Kings project, we are inundated almost with dozens and dozens of targets at various stages. So this is how we've internally sliced and diced them to better represent how where our projects are, or where our various prospects are at. So starting with Campbell Crawford at the very top, that would be our most advanced project. That would be our highest priority at the moment. But we do have other high priority targets as well that we feel we can, delineate over in the near term in terms of the potential for silver cobalt resources. And then we have other targets, sort of in the second tier, the orange, the lighter orange, and then the yellow, that are all worth looking at, and will spend, basically the lower down in the pyramid you are, the less we need to spend. But if it's successful, they move up the pyramid and they deserve more money. So there's tons and tons of opportunities here to develop more projects. And that is really classic, cobalt area type of exploration, where you've got a lot of prospects, and several of them could end up being very valuable. And then in Bethania, we're taking kind of a similar approach there. It's much more advanced in the sense that we have a mine, a permitted and recently working mine there to start off with. But we have started to go further afield beyond the original Bethania mine itself, and start mapping and delineating more veins at surface in these Carmelitas Norte, and even the eastern extent of the Bethania mine itself. Off to more of the center part of this rectangle, where we've got some more veins we've identified. So we've got lots and lots of targets there that we will again methodically be advancing, and including on the mine itself, we believe that the deep area of the mine would be our highest probability, highest level prospect right now. Again, just because that's the lowest risk. The veins are all open at depth. We've drilled them, to about 200 meters on average so far, and we're still getting really, really good mineralization, as good or better than the rest of the drilling that we did in our recent program. So that's looking like a very, very top prospect for us. But that being said, we've identified a number of other veins at surface, even just off to the east here of the mine. This, I think, will all end up connecting up together into one bigger resource, but that still needs to be, the work still needs to be done to prove that.
Okay.
And then lastly, the bigger scale at Bethania here is going to be is going to include some other targets that we've identified recently, Carmelitas and Carmelitas Norte. We've now delineated about 2.3 kilometers of strike length of these vein swarms. I call them swarms because they more or less are oriented in the same direction. A little bit of variation, but they tend to be subparallel, these veins, to one another, and you can see that in these maps here. So within these three vein swarms that we've identified so far, we've got 2.3 kilometers of strike length, of which we've only drilled 500 meters of it, so less than a quarter of it, and that's where we have our current resource.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, David. We appreciate having you on the show today, and we'll have to have you on again for a further update on Kuya.
Thanks. We have a lot going on, so I'm sure I'll be back soon.
Absolutely.